Diego County, all of you are CRFG members, right? So you've know the history of Paul Thompson and all that. But Paul Thompson started playing with this crop in San Diego several years ago, and then it became a popular plant among backyard growers. And the fact that it is a cactus, so when I first saw it, it reminded me that I had tried it in Honduras and seen a lot of it in Nicaragua. So I said, hey, this should be a fun crop to play with. And the fact that it is a cacti, we thought maybe it uses less water than avocados and other crops that are kind of slowly going out or that are becoming less and less profitable per se. So we started looking into that as an alternative, or at least for some small-scale producers that can convert to it, in a small amount of land. So we started playing with it, and we're able to source varieties. A lot of myths that we were told early on is that varieties that you couldn't grow them in full sun, that they wouldn't produce fruit without hand pollination, that you couldn't get a fruit on a plant below 4 inches, that you only got fruit on hanging branches. What other myth was out there? Edgar? I mean, but a lot of different things that people usually...
Within a nighttime.
Well, yeah, well, it is a night blooming cactus, so it was a big challenge to produce fruit.
They're competing with me. Going a little higher.
I'm talking about dragon fruit, and they love it. Yeah, sorry about that. So we started sourcing varieties, trying to obtain varieties that were, or clones that were reported to be self-fruitful and perhaps self-pollinating. And certainly, and even so fertile, to see, or in any way, I try to obtain varieties that produce fruit without human intervention. I was able to identify several from different sources. Some of them as far as Nicaragua. I imported 6 varieties out of Nicaragua, and then others that I got from local growers and or nurseries in the U.S. If I got a plant that was similar but came with different name, I treated them as different entries just for the purpose of observation. And since we didn't have any real way to determine whether they were genetically the same, we just treated them as separate. But now we have a better idea, and we can lump some of them that are duplicates. So we started playing with this in 2005. For those of you who like to move plants around from state to state or perhaps country to country, I know you guys don't do that, but I'll say this: dragon fruit falls under CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species. So if you're sourcing plants from anywhere in the world, you gotta have a CITES certificate, and that has to be issued by the country of origin. There is no, if you want to read about it, go to the APHIS website and look for PPQ, Plant Protection Quarantine, in there, and all that information is in there. Obtaining an import permit for plants is the simplest thing. You just apply for it, and it's free. You can get it, but then the issue is getting a CITES because it has political implications. The big thing was that they had been reported to produce fruit without human intervention. Planting them in urban, full sun. I didn't name any of them, like many of us do with our house plants. I neglected them as best I could. Just threw them out there, The only thing I made sure they got was water. And being a cacti, we were applying too much water. So that's something that is still undetermined what the proper amount of water to use in pitahayas is, especially if you're doing it for fruit production. The plants survive with minimal water. I mean, it's a cactus, and they will wrinkle up a little bit, dehydrate, but they will stay alive. The problem is, if you're growing them for fruit production, you need to apply more water. How much more? That's still undefined, and we're just starting out with an irrigation trial here in Fillmore to determine that. We need to fine-tune that. At the station, we were applying about 13 gallons of water a week per plant, just because that's the configuration of the irrigation system at the station. And like they say, beggars can be choosers. I was told, this is the system we have, this is what you can use. And without a big budget to buy my own drippers and sprinklers, I just went along with what they had. Later we realized that that is too much water. The advantage we have is that it's one of those, how do you call it, microjets, or the ones that spread out and we can cap them on. There is a cap that goes on the sprinklers, and we can take them on and off. So in the winter, we remove the cap to minimize the amount of water at the base of the plant. The other thing, I have an opinion about what would work commercially, but for a household type setting, I mean, whichever way you want to grow it, it will grow, it will adapt. In Guatemala, some of the plantings I've seen, people tell me you don't plant them, you just scatter the cuttings around. You kind of walk around and toss them. Don't put them in soil, they told me. Make sure they land, the cutting as you throw it, it lands on a rock. And so their trellis system in the variety is the Hylocereus guatemalensis, or American Beauty, or Bienhoa Red, and perhaps even Condor would fall in that. It's a very nice, it grows great on the shade, but it hardly produces any fruit, which is another point that we'll discuss, the shading aspect of it. So what they do in Nicaragua for a trellis in Guatemala is they make piles of rocks, big piles of rock, and then they put a few cuttings on top of them, and then they sort of droop down and all the way to the soil. And that's their trellis. In Nicaragua, which is the most commercial plantings I've seen, they used a single post system. They've tried with a T on top, they've tried with a cross on top, and they say, just a single post for the plant to climb up, and then the aerial roots that come out, adventitious root will, those aerial roots, not adventitious. They will kind of attach to the plant, and once they reach the top of the height of the post, what they do is they will chop it off, and then they start branching from there, and that sort of creates a kind of an anchor to the plant from the top, and that's all you need. As far as number of shoots or cuttings per planting site, they tried that 1, 2, 3, and 4 per. And after 4 or 5 years, they said it was no difference whatsoever, whether you had 1 plant, 2 or 3 or 4 to start with. That is a significant thing, because if you're paying $5 a cutting, and with 1 will give you the same result as 4, then you're more efficient that way. The other thing is, if you look at some of the plants in Irvine growing in a single 4x4 post, I don't see how you can fit another plant in there. I mean, these things get massive. And yes, they will get massive, and pruning is critical, and we'll talk about pruning later, but so it doesn't make any sense to crowd them out. You want to keep a light plant that is open, there is light going through, there is access for the flowers to fully open and get pollinated, and also for you as growers, to get to that fruit. Because what good is it to have a nice looking fruit inside in the middle of a thicket of a thorny variety? I'm telling you, it's like fighting cats. So you want to keep them light, you want to keep them fruit.
Wow. They're like,
Isn't that amazing? Fruits are perhaps the biggest problem for commercial growers, and for home gardeners, not a big deal. And I'll tell you what I do, and it's something that you guys may do as well if you have birds and you don't want to put a netting over the top of your plants. What I'm using now is paint strainer bags. I buy the 1 gallon bags, and about two per 250 for 2, and they have an elastic band at the base, so I just kind of put it in over the fruit. What I like about it is keeps the birds off, and it doesn't block the light, so the fruit's still getting light, and it's shading some of it, so it gets a really nice color when you put them in a bag. As opposed to using paper bags, which is another alternative that people use, in other places for other fruit. They use